In medieval Germany, marriage was not broken by paperwork, it was broken by blood. Imagine a world where a divorce wasn't settled in a courtroom with lawyers, but in a dirt pit with weapons. This wasn't a Baccalaureate brawl, it was a legal proceeding, sanctioned by the court, witnessed by the public, and blessed by the church. They call it divorce by combat. This practice emerged from a legal tradition known as trial by ordeal. In a time before modern forensics and evidence-based law, people believed that God would intervene to reveal the truth. If you survived being thrown into a river, you were innocent. If your hand healed after being burned with a hot iron, God was on your side. And if a married couple reached an impasse with accusations of infidelity or abuse that couldn't be proven, the court offered one final, brutal solution: a duel to the death. This wasn't a fight between equals. The rules documented in historical fencing manuals like Hans Tellhofer's Fechtbuch from the 1460s were meticulously designed to create a spectacle of so-called fairness. The man was placed in a circular pit, dug up to his waist. He was often armed with a simple club, and sometimes one hand was tied behind his back. He was literally and figuratively stuck, his movements severely restricted. He was a cornered animal. The woman, however, was free to move around the edge of the pit. She was given a unique weapon, a long piece of cloth with a heavy stone sewn into one end. It functioned like a sling or a medieval flail. She could swing it, whip it, or try to entangle her husband. The rules were designed to balance his raw strength against her agility and a potentially lethal weapon. It was a bizarre, calculated, and deadly choreography, but don't mistake these rules for mercy. This setup was theater. It was designed to give the illusion of a fair fight, but the odds were still grimly stacked. The pit itself was symbolic, a shallow grave waiting to be filled. The crowd wasn't just there for entertainment, they were there to witness divine judgment. The silence before the first blow, punctuated only by prayers and nervous breaths, must have been suffocating. Picture this scene: a man, half buried in the earth, his world reduced to a circle of dirt, a woman circling him like a predator, her only hope for freedom swinging from her hand. This psychological tension would have been unbearable. What must have gone through their minds? Did they remember their wedding day? The vows they once made? Now, one of them had to kill the other to be declared right in the eyes of God and the law. The fight would begin. The woman would use her mobility, trying to land a decisive blow to the head. The man would use his club to parry, to deflect, and to try and drag her into the pit with him. If he succeeded, his physical advantage would likely seal her fate. The fight was often clumsy, desperate, and savage. It was not a knightly duel of honor. It was a mud-soaked struggle for survival. The outcomes were stark and irreversible. If the man lost, if his wife managed to kill him or force him to submit, she was declared the victor. She was innocent. She was free. Her property was her own, and she could walk away from the marriage, leaving her husband's body in the pit. But if the woman lost, the consequences were far more severe. If the man killed her during the combat, he was seen as the righteous party, but even if he only subdued her, her fate was sealed. The court would often step in, and she would be executed, sometimes by being buried alive. The logic was chilling. If she lost, God had judged her guilty, and her death was simply the completion of that sentence. A victory for the husband wasn't just a divorce. It was a vindication that often ended with his wife's legal execution. So, why did this exist? It stemmed from a deeply patriarchal society where a woman's testimony was often considered less valuable than a man's. In a legal dispute, without clear evidence, the system defaulted to this extreme measure. It was a way for society to wash its hands of a difficult problem, outsourcing the final verdict to a higher power. It was presented as a way to let God decide. But as we look back through the mists of history, we have it to ask, was this justice, or was it a ritual of legalized cruelty? Was it a genuine attempt to find truth? Or was it a system designed to maintain power, control, and a brutal form of social order? The fact that a society considered this a fair and just way to end a marriage is perhaps the most unsettling part of the entire story. It was a time when divorce papers were signed, not with ink, but with blood, and the vows till death do us part were taken quite literally. Thank you for watching. If you found this dive into the dark corners of history compelling, be sure to subscribe for more stories that have been left in the shadows.